Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of For the Classical Guitarist. If you're new here, my name is John, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about some things that I think classical guitar players are tired of hearing and tired of dealing with. At least I know I am. If there's things that you relate to, let me know in the comments down below, and if there's things that you think I missed, let me know in the comments down below as well, because I would love to make a part 2. Anyway, let's get started. So the first thing is something that I think most guitar players probably hate dealing with, but trust me, classical guitar players hate it a lot more, and if you're a classical guitarist, I'm sure you can relate, and that would be just changing our strings. Now, changing strings on the electric guitar, on the acoustic guitar aren't that hard. You either just slide the string through a hole and pop a pin in, or you just slide it through the hole and just bring it up the neck and start tuning it. On the classical guitar, look at the bridge over here. It's so much more complicated. You have to know how to tie it a certain way, know how many loops to tie it so the string doesn't slip, and all that stuff. And don't go ahead and use those string bead things because that just looks bad, and honestly, I'm pretty sure it affects the sound as well. So the next one I want to talk about kind of goes hand in hand with the strings, and that would just be how much the strings get worn out. And yes, I know steel string guitars get worn out as well, but classical guitar strings, since they're made out of nylon, I find they are a little bit more sensitive, at least to some people. For me, myself personally, my bass strings are killed almost in, honestly, a few hours of practice. They start getting a little bit like darker looking, and that really dulls out the sound. And the other thing is the trebles themselves get pretty scratchy from you playing on them with the nail. And pretty soon your tone starts to definitely suffer, you know? Like I said, this next one goes hand in hand with the strings, but also a few other things as well, and that would just be your nails overall, having to take care of them. Them breaking, them getting worn out from playing too much, you having to file them getting too short, all this stuff. It's something that classical guitar players probably hate, and I wish we could just have our nails be pretty much just the perfect length all the time and never get worn out. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and it's just so irritating to have to always file them and risk them sometimes being too short, or sometimes them being too long and having to go ahead and make them shorter. But again, like I said, not wanting them to get too short by accident. I think most classical guitar players hate dealing with this, unless if you have super strong nails, which in that case, I and probably almost all the other classical guitar players envy you a lot. So this one I'm sure is pretty classical guitar specific, and I'm sure other string instruments deal with the same pain, but that would be when you don't use your teacher's fingerings and they make you relearn the whole entire thing again. Honestly, it's such a pain, and I do understand why they do it. They know the ones that they think will sound the best, and they've done them before, and they've probably tried out the ones that you've tried as well and come to the conclusion that this one is probably better for what they want to do. However, having to learn something just to be told, well, hey, learn this one part again, or even sometimes learn the whole piece again, can be pretty annoying. And the fingerings that are going to be used are going to change where the notes are, how many notes you have in a chord even, and all this stuff. So it can be a big change, and having to relearn something that you already know is more of a hassle than just having to learn something fresh the first time. Trust me. So now this one's one that I've heard a lot. I don't know if you guys have. Let me know if you have, definitely in the comments below, because I really hope it's not just me. But there have been so many times when I've told people that I was studying classical guitar, that I play classical guitar, and their first assumption is classic rock. I guess they hear the word classic and they think, oh, classic rock must be the same thing. And they start asking about my favorite like Led Zeppelin songs, Cream songs, Beatles songs, and all that stuff. And even though I love that music and I know how to play that music actually pretty well, because I used to do that stuff a lot when I was younger, I understand one person here and there making a mistake about it. And it's happened at least 5 or 6 times from many different people. I don't know. I wanted to throw that on here just because I thought it was an interesting one. But again, if it's not just me, let me know in the comments below, because I would love to not feel alone on having that happen. Okay, so this next one goes pretty well along with one of the previous ones, and that would just be people asking you about why your nails are so long on only one hand. And yes, I'm sure there are reasons for some people on why they have their nails a little bit longer. Some people even go ahead and just guess that reason. I'm not going to say what it is. If you guys want to talk about it in the comments, go ahead. And sometimes I will say, oh yeah, they're for guitar playing. And people will say, oh, well, why don't you just use a guitar pick? Wouldn't that be easier? Or like, oh, I thought so-and-so does finger picking on their guitar and they don't have nails, do they? And they're usually talking about people like Paul McCartney or people like David Gilmour, who you hear that like finger style stuff sort of in their music, but not really. And I don't know. I just never know what to say to this without going into a whole long conversation. But yeah, it's a question I've gotten in the past. I haven't gotten it for a while, luckily. But yeah, it's something I've heard a lot in the past. And again, if you guys have heard this too, let me know. So this one is not just a classical guitar thing. This one is probably for all musicians of probably any style. And that would be people asking you to play because it's going to be great exposure for you. And this is a joke that I know that musicians make all the time, but it's something that really is a pain. I do want to take a second to talk about because it is so tiring having to deal with this and having to hear this from so many people trying to get you to play their weddings or play their events or play in the restaurants or all that stuff. So sadly, back when I first started to take gigs, I would often sometimes take gigs that paid a little bit less because I was told they would be great exposure. And as an unknowing undergraduate student just trying to make a little money with guitar, I thought that was a great thing. I thought, well, I'll do this gig and I'm going to get more gigs from it and I'm going to have tons of gigs and then I'll be all set. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. I did a few gigs where I had made a few connections, and usually those connections would fall through, or sometimes they'd happen, but they'd be kind of a similar deal. Long story short, don't take gigs for exposure no matter what it seems like, unless if it's someone that you know is already pretty well off and you've seen other people get success from that same experience, then yeah, I'd suggest to do that. But most of the time, playing for exposure is going to work. It's not going to get you any more gigs, and they probably know this too. So don't fall for that trap like I did, because it's not worth it. Okay, so now this next one is one that I'm sure most people who play any kind of more difficult music, whether it's fast, whether it's more musical, whether it's more expressive, whatever it is, probably deal with. And that is people who like to listen to music generally don't like to listen to that stuff. They like to listen to stuff that they know, they like to listen to stuff that sounds fun, and usually, unfortunately, that stuff doesn't always sound that fun, and if it does, they're not going to appreciate it because it's hard, they're going to appreciate it because it sounds fun. One story that a fellow classical guitarist told me is one time he was playing at a restaurant gig, I believe, and he was playing all the tough rap, whether it was Rodrigo, whether it was the Chaconne by Bach, all the stuff. And he played it, and he was playing it great. And then this lady went up to him and said, "Oh, do you know Spanish Romance?" And he was just like, "Oh no, I don't have that music for that one." And she was just like, "Oh, well, keep practicing, you'll get it." And this story shows just that. You know, obviously those pieces are way, way, way harder than Spanish Romance. If you don't know those pieces, go check them out. But again, to the average person, Spanish Romance was what they wanted to hear, and because they wanted to hear it, that was the one that was more impressive to them. Okay, now finally for this last one, again, probably just the classical guitar thing, but people not being able to hear you. Unfortunately, the classical guitar is so quiet. It's such a small, quiet instrument, whether we like it or not. And the only way for us to be heard at events and things is to be amplified or to be mic'd. And not only that, as soon as you play a note, the sound just goes away. It decays pretty much almost instantaneously. Not really, but kind of. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you're still here watching, let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. I'm trying out some different video styles. I wanted to make this one just a little bit shorter and to the point, and just overall not as long. So if you guys like that, let me know what you think down below. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you in the next video, and if you like what you see, remember, subscribe for more classical guitar content.